I'm going to be completely honest. Today, I'm just here for the vibes. I've had a long past couple of weeks. Um, so, yeah, I'm just literally here for the vibes. I want to talk about a couple of things that I have been thinking a lot about. Some people might argue they are hot takes, unpopular opinions, controversial beliefs, but as I think and reflect more about stuff, there's certain thoughts that I've had recently that have made me start thinking a little bit more about certain truths that we've accepted as truths and whether or not they are true. Now, before I carry on waffling, I'll just start off with the first thing that I've been thinking a lot about, which is work-life balance is contextual. We preach a lot about work-life balance, and I've realized that a lot of people that preach about it are normally the ones who've already achieved a degree of success. And so, because they've achieved that degree of success, they can now lean more towards the work life balance. But if you are someone who is currently chasing some form of success, some form of goal, then you will need a degree of unbalanced. You will need a degree of making sure that you're prioritizing those goals. You can't have equal quantities between everything that you have in your life. Like, you can't spend the same amount of time with your family, your friends, work. Work takes, for most people, work takes majority of the time. So you almost see that there is a dichotomy here between, okay, well, work-life balance is important, and I have preached about it multiple times, but in recent times I've been thinking about the fact that it's contextual. If you are not necessarily trying to chase big things, then work-life balance is more attainable. But if you are looking to do something big, then you are going to need to be unbalanced. You won't be able to be balanced. And that's why I reference the people that are at the top or that have made something out of their lives. They now get the privilege to focus on work-life balance. But if you ask them on the way up, if you study them on the way up, they didn't. On the way up, they were the most unbalanced. Why? Because it requires a degree of unbalanced. To achieve greatness, there is a requirement for being unbalanced. That's just the simple truth. And if you don't believe me, then inspect your own greatnesses. Have any, then see the patterns. If you don't have any, then see the patterns. You will see the patterns between the greatnesses that you've achieved in your own life and the ones that you haven't. And you'll see that the patterns are always the same. There's something in common. So I've been thinking a lot about that. I'm not saying it's not important. I think it is important, but it also depends on what you want out of your life and at what stage of your life you are. That's the key. It's not having it all the time, but is this the right balance at this stage of my life? And that's a personal question, that's a subjective question, and that's personalized to everyone. Another thing I've been thinking about is people always talk about how money isn't important, money isn't everything, and I find that to be a bit disingenuous, if I'm being honest. That's just my own thoughts. Money isn't everything, but everything affects money, or everything is affected by money. So to a degree, money does affect everything. It might not be everything, I agree. Health is more important. Your own happiness is more important. Spending time with your loved ones is more important. But all of these things that we've just talked about, they are affected by money to a degree, right? If you want to have a good health, at some point, money is going to come into play, right? If you need to go to the hospital, if you need to pay for private, if you need to get some treatment, if you want to have food on your table, that requires money. If you want to make sure your bills are paid, that requires money. Money isn't everything, but it does affect everything that matters in your life. So the people that say that it's not important, it is important. Is it the end all or be all? No, probably no, because your health is more important, right? If without health you can't have anything else. And there's a bunch of other things that are more important. But to say that it's not important at all is disingenuous. I definitely believe that it is important because it affects a lot of things, if not every single thing that matters in your life. Another thing that I want to talk about is manifestation. Manifestation is an interesting one. I feel like a lot of people think that you can just manifest for the vibes, kind of like how I am today, just for the vibes. No, it's not really like that. For manifestation to work, you need actions. You need actions to match the manifestation. If you're going to visualize something, if you're going to think about something, if you're going to get clear on something that you want, manifesting it isn't just sitting there and saying, I want this to happen. Manifesting it is saying, I want this to happen, and then actually taking the actions to make it happen. Because otherwise it's kind of pointless, isn't it? If you think about it, you're just saying random words and you're not really backing it. You're not following through. That's something I've also been thinking about, that action dictates everything. It doesn't matter where you are in your life, whatever the situation is, almost every single time, taking action over everything is what moves the needle. Doesn't matter what emotion you're feeling, doesn't matter what the circumstance is that you're currently in, taking action will almost guaranteed put you in a better place than not taking action. So when you think about manifestation, it's almost like people believe that you can just think it, you can just say it, you can just affirm it in front of a mirror, and then all of a sudden it'll happen. It's not entirely true. You need to back it with actions, otherwise it doesn't connect. The connect or the disconnect here between your thoughts and your actions is what will either dictate it being a reality or it continuing to be just a thought and a dream. Something else that I wanted to talk about is that you don't need goals to be successful, which sounds, again, counterintuitive, coming from someone who has also preached about goal setting. And this is what was so interesting, is everyone's allowed to grow and challenge their own thoughts. Everyone's allowed to question things. Everyone's allowed to transform. And the same applies to me. I might have spoken about things in the past that maybe today I don't entirely agree with, or I have an alternative perspective to it. Doesn't mean that I didn't mean it at the time. It just means that I've grown as a person. I'm constantly evolving. And so I'm changing my perspectives. I'm changing certain perceptions on things that I constantly think about, struggle with, dwell on. So you don't need goals to be successful. What do I mean by that? I feel like you need direction. Because if you're just driving in your car, not knowing where you're going, you're just lost. So you need direction, but some people overemphasize the goal setting so much. And I realized, it's interesting, I'm just thinking about this now. They do that because it makes them feel good. Setting goals makes people feel good. You get a dopamine hit. When you're setting your goals and you're planning things, you get a dopamine hit. And talking about those goals also gives you a dopamine hit. Which is interesting because it's almost like mental masturbation to a degree. I think I've heard Chris Williamson mention that term, mental masturbation, where you'll read self-help books, but you won't take action. But reading the self-help books makes you feel good about yourself. So you're just stimulating yourself mentally. Mental stimulation. I can't remember what the term was. It was either of those. But that's what's interesting, is you get so caught up in setting the goals that when it comes to actually doing things to achieve them, you kind of like, you lack the motivation, you lack the discipline, you are not fueled to go and do it. So you need direction. You don't need goals. Direction could be represented in the form of goals, but really and truly, you just need to know where you're going. I think that's more important. You need to know where you're going. You don't need to exactly know specifically where you're going. You don't need to know the details of how you're going to get there. You don't need, those are irrelevant. You need some form of direction, but you need to focus more on the steps to achieve the goals, not necessarily the goals. And that, to me, is something that I've been thinking a lot about, how we have a lot of fun setting goals because it is fun. It does make us satisfied to a degree because of the dopamine hit, but it's not moving the needle. And we spend too much time setting goals, whereas we should be quick with that kind of stuff. Just quick decision making, quick goal setting, quick direction setting, quick intention setting, and then back into action. And as I'm making content online, what I've realized is a lot of the times I'm making content for myself. I'm making content as a reminder to myself. As much as it is for all of you, it's also for me. I'm doing it for myself as a way to remind myself as well. And that's actually a common theme I found across every content that I put out. It's that it's always almost coming back to being a reminder to myself. Something I wanted to also touch on is that most excuses that you give yourself, they're not really excuses. They're there to make you feel comfortable about why you're not doing what you said you were going to do. That's my take on it. It's there to make you feel comfortable about the fact that you're not doing the thing that you said you were going to do or that you wanted to do. So most excuses are not real, but they're a good way to make us feel good about ourselves for not doing it. They're a great way to entertain ourselves and to justify to ourselves and to almost make us believe that that's really why we didn't do the thing or didn't get around to what we said we were going to get around to. Yeah. Been thinking about that a lot as well. Something that I'm looking at my notes at the moment, because as I was on the train, I got a train to come here to record today. And as I was on the train, I was just writing quick notes about things that I believe or that have come to believe in recent times that maybe are not that popular. And something that I wrote down, I was just reading it now, is you're not full of ambitions, you're full of insecurities. But that's okay because both are fuel. It doesn't matter if it's ambition or insecurity. It doesn't matter if you're driven or dragged. It doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, it's still fuel. Long term, it matters. But I don't think on the short term, it matters whether or not you're being driven or dragged. You just got to be careful that you are not being dragged by your insecurities towards something that you don't want. That's where the line gets blurry. It's whether you chasing something because you have a desire, you are driven, and you want to chase that thing because you're an ambitious person, or because you have an insecurity, you're insecure, and you're being dragged by those insecurities towards that something. That doesn't matter as long as it's not taking you somewhere you don't want to be. You can use that as fuel. A lot of the times we label certain emotions as positive or negative, but I don't think there's such thing as like a positive emotion or a negative emotion. At the end of the day, it's just an emotion. And you can choose what you do with it. You can choose how to direct that energy. That's the beauty of it, is you have a choice there. You could choose to use the energy that you get from whatever emotion and fuel it into your desires. So you might not be full of ambition. For the most part, you might be full of insecurities, but it's still fuel. Just make sure that you're driving the car where you want it to be. Just make sure that you're still in control of where you truly want to be. And question yourself, ask yourself, do I really want the thing that I say that I want? Do I really want the thing that I take actions towards? Do I really want the thing that I've dreamt about. Like, you have to question yourself, why do you even want it? You know, genuine questions. Why do you even want it? Do you want things because you genuinely deep down intrinsically want them, or do you want it because there's an external reason, an external factor? That's also something to consider. Yeah, I'm thinking a lot about this kind of things. Very laid back today. Something else here that I wrote down in my notes. So, burnout. Oh, yeah, burnout. Burnout, I believe, is more about the type of work that you do than the quantity of the work. And I think we confuse it. We tend to be like, if we have a lot of work, that we're burning out. But that's not true if that work is the type of work that you love. If you are doing a lot of work that you hate, yes, you're going to burn out. But if you were doing a lot of work of something that you love, then you wouldn't call it burnout, you'd call it passion. Isn't that interesting? So burnout, even though we associate it with the workload, it's actually not to do with the load of work that you have, but more so the type of work that you're doing. That's something that I thought about recently, and it was enlightening to me because it's so true. I work a lot of the times in my free time on things that I love, and I'm not burned out by it, and I work a lot, and I have other things going on, and it's because I love what I do. But if I hated what I did, I'd be burned out. I'd be drained. I wouldn't be energized. I wouldn't be filled with passion. So burnout is not indicative of workload most of the times. I think it's more indicative of the type of workload that you have. And that's something interesting that I thought about recently that made me think, wow, where in my life have I felt burned out and why? And where in my life have I not felt burned out and why? And that's kind of how I got there. It's because I started asking myself questions. And I started answering those questions for myself and then came to the realization of how I view burnout now. Whereas in the past, I would have viewed it as too much work, quantity of workload. So it's pretty interesting how things change around. Let's talk about the educational system. I just got a lot of thoughts on this. I think the educational system is interesting. The traditional educational system, it's more of like a filter-based system. That's how I would describe it. It's a filter-based system because you are effectively trying to get a pass or trying to get a certain average or a certain grade so that you can go on to the next stage and the next level. But there's like zero feedback in that whole process. If you pass an exam that allows you to move on to the next level of the educational system, you get no feedback other than the grade. You don't get feedback on the things that you could improve on, the things that you did well. Like, there's zero feedback in that. It's just a filter system. You hit the targets, you move on to the next level, you hit the targets again, and you move on to the next level. So that makes the educational system a filter-based system. There's no personalization. And maybe that's not the traditional educational system's job. It's not to have personalization. But imagine a world where the educational system was personalized. Imagine a world where feedback was consistently present. Imagine a world where failure and embracing failure was something that was taught. That would make a complete shift in the paradigm for the educational system. I'd argue that would make it better, because what you have right now is you have a generalized system that is just a bunch of filters to get you to the next level, and there's zero feedback, zero embracing of failure, zero personalization. I don't know, I've been thinking a lot about this, and it almost feels like the system needs a redo. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not an expert in education, and I certainly don't have in-depth knowledge of how the system gets built and how the curriculums come together. But I think it would be awesome if in schools, in colleges, universities, if there was specific allocated time for people to explore things that they are interested in, that they are curious about. Imagine how much of a difference that would make. Imagine if there was a level of personalization added by just simply adding extra time or allocated time, not necessarily extra, but just allocated time for students to follow their curiosity, follow their interests, get to learn more about something they are genuinely passionate about. I think that would make a huge difference. Imagine if instead of failing an exam or an assessment and just getting your grade to say that you did not pass, imagine if you actually got a bunch of feedback to tell you areas of improvement and areas that you did well. And not just that, imagine if there was a certain level of embracing the failure, of learning from it. Because at the moment, when you don't pass an exam or an assessment in university and school, and again, I don't know, it's been a few years now, but maybe things have changed. I don't think they have. At the moment, there's like zero feedback and embracing failure about it. It's just, didn't pass, next time you have to pass. As simple as it is. So something needs to change there. Because what I've noticed as a trend is a lot of people are dropping off. A lot of people are dropping off from the educational system. And some of it is because of this trend of entrepreneurship, solopreneurship, building a business. But I think part of it is also because for some people, that system is not allowing them to grow in the ways that they want to grow. Because it's so generalized and because it's just a bunch of filters that are trying to get you to the next level. Something to think about. Let's talk about strengths and weaknesses as a good follow-up there. Strengths and weaknesses. Does it matter? Is it a strength? Is it a weakness? Does it matter? Or is it just context dependent? If I'm thinking out loud, alone in a room, you might see that as a strength. If I'm thinking out loud at work in a meeting, in a room full of people, you might see that as a weakness. So then, is it a strength? Is it a weakness? What is it? Well, it's context dependent. I would completely scrap that frame and focus on skills. It's a skill. And that skill is most beneficial in this context, or that context, or this set of contexts, this set of circumstances. I just focus on skills. It's about skills. It's not about strengths or weaknesses. Because one job might perceive your skills as weaknesses, whereas another job might perceive the same exact set of skills as strengths. So how can it both be a strength and a weakness? Well, the context matters. So then it's not about strengths, weaknesses. It's about the context, but a deeper level than that, it's just about skills. We always emphasized, at least I've always felt like it was emphasized growing up, that you have to improve on your weaknesses. But it was never emphasized that you needed to double down on your strengths. Like, I remember this vividly from like just society in general growing up. There was never an emphasis to double down on your strengths, but there was always an emphasis to improve your weaknesses. But why? I'm not saying you shouldn't work on your weaknesses, but is that beneficial towards what you need to do or the context in which you are? If it is, then it makes sense. Of course, you want to work on it. Like, if I want to become a public speaker and public speaking is, for example, a weakness of mine, then yeah, sure, I need to work on it, because otherwise, how am I going to tap into that space? Right? If storytelling is a weakness of mine and I want to, again, be a public speaker, then I need to work on that skill because it's going to matter for the space that I want to tap in. But if I didn't, and I'm not saying, to be fair, these might not be the best examples because I think public speaking, storytelling are just generally good skills to have regardless. But maybe if I wasn't going, or if I wasn't interested in a space where those are very prevalent skills, then maybe I wouldn't even care about focusing time and energy on improving those. Maybe I would just focus on other skills that would be more beneficial and more advantageous towards the things that I'm trying to get into. So that's just something to think about, that is it really a big deal whether it's a strength or a weakness, or is it just a matter of skills and context? And I'd argue that it's definitely the latter. I think the last one that I want to talk about for this episode is imposter syndrome. A lot of people see imposter syndrome as a sign of something's wrong, something's not right, I need to change something. This feeling, it doesn't feel like a feeling that I should have. But why? Like, I feel like this episode I'm just questioning everything. But why? Why do you need to get rid of that feeling? Why do you believe that it's not a normal feeling? I'd argue that if you're not feeling imposter syndrome at any point in your life, or at multiple points in your life, I'd argue that there's something more wrong in that than actually feeling it, because that means you are in a space of growth. That means that you are maybe uncomfortable. Something's new. So every time something's new, it's also hard. I remember the first time I was recording in this podcast studio, it was new. Therefore, it felt hard because it was unknown. And maybe there was a level of imposter. Wow, should I really be here in a professional studio doing a podcast episode? Like, this doesn't even feel real. It doesn't even feel like I belong here. But that's normal. It would be weird if I came in for the first time and never done anything like this, and I was just super, super, super comfortable with it. That would be weird. But it's totally fine. It's totally normal. It's totally expected that you're going to experience imposter syndrome. It's not a sign that something's wrong. If anything, it's a sign that everything's right. You are a human being, and that's how it's supposed to be. You are meant to feel imposter syndrome. You're meant to feel a lot of things that we negate or tend to reject or tend to believe that we shouldn't be feeling. You're meant to feel those things. It's a sign of growth. It's a sign of life. It's part of life. Feeling imposter syndrome is not a sign that something's wrong. Think about it this way. When you're hungry, your body signals to you that you're hungry. So you know that you need to take action towards catering for you being hungry. In this case, you need to eat food. When you're thirsty, that's your body sending a signal to you saying that you need water. So you take the according action and you drink water. When you're growing, your body sends you a signal. That is the imposter syndrome feeling. That's the signal. I mean, you just got to take action, again, to grow and to flourish in that new space that you're in. So when you think about imposter syndrome, I hope you think about it from a different frame after this, because it's not a sign that anything's wrong. It's a sign that everything's right. It's a sign that you are growing, and it's just a signal from your body, from your brain, from your mind, telling you there's something that needs to happen. And again, everything always comes full circle. I love this. Everything comes full circle. It goes back to action. That's all it goes back to. So yeah, I've got a couple more things, but I'll save that for the next episode. Thank you so much for listening, for watching me waffle my way through, for watching me being here for the vibes. I'm kind of enjoying it, the laid back thing. I'm trying a different format here, so hope that resonates with you. Let me know in the comments if it does. Please hit the subscribe button. That would mean the world to me, to the podcast, and it would help us a lot. Thank you.